sports. Last summer, our new adventure was professional soccer, American style, as played in the North American Soccer League. On May 12th, we were in Tampa, Florida for our first game, a rematch of the previous year's championship game between the Tampa Bay Rowdies and the mighty Cosmos of New York. Our first goal, appropriately, was scored by one of the sport's great stars, the talented, flamboyant Giorgio Chinaglia of the Cosmos. The crowd was a pleasant surprise to us. More than 40,000 were there that day. As for the game, well, it would take another turn before the afternoon was done. Watch as two beautiful passes set up Peter Barelich for the tying goal. There it is. In the end, it was the Rowdies delighting their fans with a 3-2 victory over the Cosmos. So it began in 1979. It ended our first season of soccer in the Meadowlands of New Jersey. A crowd of more than 50,000 this time watched as Trevor Wymark scored the winning goal for the Vancouver Whitecaps over Tampa Bay. This was Soccer Bowl 79, and now it's time to begin a new season, a new decade.
ABC Sports presents American Soccer League. Today we present NASL Soccer, a new decade. This ABC Sports Special is brought to you by Budweiser. For all you do, this Bud's for you.
When I was a kid, we had a favorite joke, that Washington was first in war, first in peace, and last in the American League. That was the American Baseball League, of course, and the Washington Senators were, in fact, the traditional doormats. Today, the Senators are no more. The professional summer sports franchise in the nation's capital is known as the Washington Diplomats, a team in the North American Soccer League. And as spring comes in, the Diplomats are expected to be anything but doormats. Hello, I'm Jim McKay, reporting from RFK Stadium in Washington. We thought this would be an appropriate place to begin our season because this is where it's going to end. On Sunday, September 21st, Soccer Bowl 1980 will be played right here as we enter a new decade in professional soccer in the United States. We like to think that last year in our first season of covering the league that we learned a lot. Certainly we learned a lot about the game. We like to think that we learned a lot about covering it on television. And of course, we learned a great deal about the people, about the players, the personalities who come from around the world to play professional soccer in the United States. And what games we saw. Some of them were almost unbelievable. There was one between Chicago and Detroit, you may remember, in which the Chicago Sting, 2 goals down with about 1 minute and 45 seconds to play, came back to tie it up with Detroit. And then there was that marathon between the Cosmos of New York and the Vancouver Whitecaps, one that went on and on and on and was thrilling all the way. We're going to be taking a look backwards to see just a little bit of those 2 games and other games as we look forward to try to explore the season of 1980. It should be a fascinating one. We'll look at the teams who are favored and, of course, have another look at some of the great personalities who will be playing the game. But just before we do any of that, let's go back to the most important soccer game played in the United States last season, Soccer Bowl 79. The location was the beautiful stadium in the Meadowlands of New Jersey, but the home team, the Cosmos, weren't there. They had been eliminated the week before by Vancouver. Still more than 50,000 turned out and saw Trevor Wymark, number 9, put the Vancouver Whitecaps ahead of the Tampa Bay Rowdies. 50,000 gathered to watch a team from far-off Florida play another team from even more distant Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Have another look at Trevor Wymark. The goal that put the Whitecaps in front. That was not to last all day, however. Watch the Tampa Bay Rowdies in white, coming from left to right now. And watch particularly Jan van der Veen, a midfielder, regaining the ball after having passed it off and beating the best goalie in the league, Bill Parks of Vancouver. It was all tied up, and the tough Dutchman had done it. The green and yellow fannies, as they call them down there, who had come from Tampa, were delighted. 1-1 was the score at this point. Another look now at Van der Veen. With his beautiful move, beating a defender and then beating goalie Parks, the tying goal. In the second half, number 5, Bob Leonarduzzi, a hometown Vancouver lad, moved the ball into the middle. The Whitecaps in the blue jerseys going from left to right now. Number 23, Alan Ball with the pass to Wymark, and Wymark scoring again. Trevor Wymark was the hero of the day, scoring both goals as Vancouver defeated Tampa Bay for the championship by a score of 2-1. This one was deflected off a defender. Watch, not there, right here. Vancouver had won the day. Our first season of soccer was complete, and the North American Soccer League had a new champion. The Whitecaps took a victory lap, sharing their moment of glory with a band of Vancouver fans who had traveled across the continent to watch them. Some of them had traded jerseys, you see, with the Tampa Bay Routers. It was a tribute to the team and the popularity of the sport in the city of Vancouver that their fans had come so far to see them. The big crowd that day was also a tribute to the growth of soccer in North America, that more than 50,000 would turn out in New Jersey to watch the two biggest rivals of their hometown team, said that they now came to watch the game itself, not just their own team. As for the Whitecaps, they would go home to a hero's welcome, which you'll see later on today's program. In a minute, we'll begin our look forward as the North American Soccer League enters the new decade. We're within an easy walk of the Washington Monument right now at a soccer practice field on the banks of the Potomac River. Behind me, you see the members of the Washington Diplomat soccer team in practice. We're going to be talking about them in just a minute as we begin our overview of the upcoming season of 1980 in the North American Soccer League, a league that is composed of 24 teams in 2 conferences, the National and the American, each conference in turn subdivided into 3 divisions, the Eastern, the Central, and the Western. Now, the Diplomats are members of the Eastern Division of the National Conference, and that's where we're going to start. There'll be a strong team, a very popular team, principally, quite frankly, because of the addition of one player during the off-season. He is the most famous player in the world today, Johan Cruyff. So let's go to the National East. Here are the teams in the division: the Washington Diplomats, the New York Cosmos, the Toronto Blizzard, and the Rochester Lancers. Let's check them in that order. First of all, Washington. Let's look at Johan Cruyff in action last year when he played with the Los Angeles Aztecs. Here he is against the Diplomats in the playoffs with a magnificent solo run that ends up in a goal. Cruyff now in a shootout against Phil Parks of Vancouver. Look at this move, beating the best goalie in the league and doing it easily. Johan Cruyff, the smooth, seemingly effortless beauty of the greatest player in the world today in action. We'll see him against the Cosmos on Sunday afternoon, June 1st. He's totally committed to American soccer, has moved his handsome family here permanently. I said to Johan that many Americans still think that there's not enough scoring in the game. I asked him why he disagreed with that statement.
Well, because if you know the game and look at the game, there's so many things in the game without scoring. Scoring is just one little thing. If I take an example of a baseball game, and I'm going to watch it and I don't know nothing about it, I just say, I see one throwing at the other. And what happens once in a while, somebody hits it and he never comes on base. So you understand, well, what I'm watching for now. You can see the curve, what the pitcher is going. You can see the first base, what he's doing. You see the shortstop coming in or whatever he does. And there's a lot of game in there. It's not only the one who's hitting where the game starts. No, that's where the game ends. So in soccer, you've got such a lot of things to do. Movement without a ball, and that's maybe the answer to the question. Everybody looks at the ball and what a player with the ball does. And I'm always trying to teach all the players to run without the ball, because with 22 guys on the field, 90 minutes to go, so maybe you've got an average of 2 minutes, you've got a ball. But the 90 minutes to go, so the running without a ball is much more important.
Johan Cruyff is the key to Washington's success, but there are others. Bob Yarushi, number 2, joined the Diplomats last year from the Cosmos and has become an important member. He's a 25-year-old Canadian, one of the rising North American stars in the league. Last Saturday night, he scored a goal as the Diplomats lost their season opener 3-2 in a shootout with Tampa Bay. Now, at age 23, Sonny Askew of Baltimore is starting his 4th season with the Diplomats. But he starts this year as a full-fledged scoring member of the team. He was a high school All-American at Patterson Park in Baltimore, served his time sitting on the Diplomats bench, but last year scored 8 goals and had 6 assists. Sonny Askew. Another scoring star for the Diplomats is Alan Green, an Englishman. In fact, he's their leading scorer. In 1979, he scored 16 goals, and at age 26, he's at the peak of his career. Add to Cruyff, Green, Yarushi, and Askew names like Joe Horvath and Lozano, a new addition, a Spaniard who played in Belgium, and you're the makings of a team that should be a strong contender for the division championship. Bill Irwin, the Irish goalie, had a fine season last year and should get the job done again. The Washington Diplomats. Now, the Cosmos, out for revenge this year. Their scoring star again will be Giorgio Chinaglia. He's one of the best-known players in the world. Led the league in goals scored last year. He has one job only, to score, and that he does with a panache and a flamboyance that make him a top gate attraction wherever he plays. His scoring partner of last season, Dennis Stewart, is gone now, but just 4 days ago, the Cosmos signed Francois van der Elst, a Belgian, one of the top scorers in Europe, to team with Giorgio. Vern Lundquist, who again will be working with us this year, spent some time with the Cosmos recently. We asked him for his assessment of the league.
As one who has followed the teams in this league for more than a decade, it's my expectation that those clubs which demonstrated strength in 1979 will be equally strong in 1980, if indeed not improved. But on the spot, I'd pick 3 top clubs. Hard to argue about Vancouver. The Whitecaps, after all, are the defending league champions, and despite numerous personnel shifts, they seem to be improved. In Washington, the entire city is excited about the recent acquisition of Johan Cruyff. He alone makes the Diplomats a tremendous force in this league in the coming year. And here in Los Angeles, the New York Cosmos wound up their preseason training. Once again, with a new coach and all of these superstars, they are the pick of the league. And here in L.A., I had a chance to talk with one of those superstars, Giorgio Chinaglia. In your division, the most interesting change, of course, is taking place in Washington. How much has the addition to Johan Cruyff meant to that team?
Oh, it's meant tremendous for them. You know, they have also paid a lot of money for other players. You know, they also got other good players. And we know they're going to be contending for us, not only in the playoffs, but in the divisional race.
You're 33 years of age now, and you just told me that you're playing right now better than you ever have.
Well, you know, I worked very hard this winter, and these are my last years. And when usually you come to the end, you work harder and you train harder. And, you know, you become even more professional than when you're young. When you're young, everything is going your way. When instead you're getting older, you have to work harder and prepare yourself better.
Rick Davis, born in Denver, raised in California, now resident in New Jersey, became a full-time valuable member of the Cosmos midfield last year. At age 20, this was Davis scoring his first North American Soccer League goal against New England in a game we televised last summer. Many see him as the first United States-born player to be a major star. Vern asked him if that responsibility bothered him.
Well, I do feel a certain responsibility, although, you know, I kind of have a split outlook on it. I feel very honored that the mantle is being hung on my shoulders. Although I look at my teammates and the other Americans around the league who I think that are all improving as fast as I did. So it's an honor, but it's also an inspiration to keep myself working hard and doing all that I can.
Do you feel you will become the first American superstar?
Well, I'd hope so. I'd not only for my, personal satisfaction, but I'd like to see an American finally be labeled as competitive. In other words, have the ability to play in the rest of the world. So I'd enjoy that very much.
In addition to Davis, what a midfield lineup the Cosmos have. Johan Neeskens, number 13, has been injured, but seems ready now. He's the great Dutch player. Also in midfield will be the elegant Franz Beckenbauer, the sometimes moody Bogicevic, and Julio Cesar Romero, named after Julius Caesar, but known as Romerito, a Paraguayan teenager who is already a world-class player. On defense, Carlos Alberto, still aging like fine wine, will be joined by another Brazilian, José Bernardi, called Oscar, in the Brazilian fashion of calling players by a single name, like Pelé. Wim Reisbergen, Eskandarian, and Bruce Wilson round out the defense. Hubert Birkenmeyer is the goalie. What a team, and in June they get a new coach, the famous Hennes Weisweiler from Germany. They also had the league's #1 draft choice, Don Ebert of St. Louis, and Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville, the current NCAA champions. We visited Don and asked him what it's been like so far.
When we went to training camp, I thought myself maybe my level of play was, going to be good enough to be able to handle the pros. And you get out there and you start playing 1 and 2 touch with Beckenbauer and Chinaglia and Bogey and those guys, and you realize their skill level is just unbelievably high. You learn something new every day because just by watching them, you pick little things up that makes them just the great players they are. I think it's going to take some time for me to get acquainted with the New York way of living, but there's a lot happening. I'll never be bored or anything, so hopefully I can adjust to it and make the best of it. I think this year was my situation with the Cosmos is more like a learning experience. I have to accept that fact. I'm not going to go in and knock George out, or I'm not going to knock Beckenbauer out of a job, and I have to realize that. You know, whether or not I want to sit the bench for the rest of my life, of course, and I don't think any player wants to sit the bench, but you have to take it slowly, learn, take it as it comes, and hopefully when my shot comes, I'll be ready to make the best of it.
Don Ebert, a name to file for the future. Rounding out the Eastern Division will be the Toronto Blizzard and the Rochester Lancers. You're watching Toronto, whose scoring leaders again should be Ivan Lukačević and Peter Lorimer. They've been strengthened by the addition of goalie Tony Chersky and Francesco Morini, an outstanding Italian defender. Rochester could have the league's leading scorer this season in the amazing Canadian teenager Branko Segota. That's the National East.
In 1960,
Division are the Minnesota Kicks, the Tulsa Roughnecks, the Dallas Tornado, and the Atlanta Chiefs. Let's consider them now. Ace Netzelenge is one of the most exciting players to watch in the league. He's from South Africa, a midfielder who can confound the opposition and bring home fans to their feet with his marvelous moves. He's a member of the Minnesota Kicks, who will be trying for their 5th consecutive divisional championship. The Ace makes the machine move at midfield along with 35-year-old Willie Morgan of Scotland. Netzelenge often moves forward, though, and was the team's 3rd leading scorer last season. Let's watch Ace one more time as he scores from far out. Here it comes. Ace Netzelenge. Minnesota, a dangerous team on offense. Consider Ron Fletcher, an explosive blonde bomber, only 23 years old, but he's been with the Kicks since they started in 1976. He's their 2nd all-time scoring star, had 14 goals last season. You're watching him here scoring the winning goal in a 1-0 victory over Vancouver in a televised ABC game last year. However, Ron was injured during the indoor season and was operated on for torn cartilage in his knee. He's not expected to play until the middle of May. However, he should be ready for our TV game against Detroit on May 25th. Now in the replay, you can see a graphic illustration of what makes Minnesota go. Willie Morgan in the headband, moving the ball into Ace Netzelenge, number 11. There he is. He gets it over cleverly and quickly to Alan Willie, number 9. Willie across to Fletcher, and the goal. Perfect Minnesota offense. As for Alan Willie, he's Minnesota's all-time scoring leader. Number 9 scored 21 goals last season. Like Fletcher, Willie is 23 years old, already the 5th leading scorer in NASL history. They call him the Artful Dodger, and he considers himself at home in Minnesota.
Consider yourself our mate. We don't have no fuss. For after some consideration, we can stay. Consider yourself one of us.
I wouldn't say as an aggressive player because I don't go around throwing my weight about. I go in where it hurts because that's where most of the goals come from. That's what my job is about.
Alan Willie, a Briton who considers himself very much at home in the land of 10,000 lakes, the star of the Minnesota Kicks. Well, the Tulsa Roughnecks surprised Willie and the rest of the Minnesota team by eliminating them in the playoffs last year after Minnesota had compiled a record of 21-9 during the regular season. Then Tulsa tasted even headier wine. Here they were in the process of beating the Cosmos in the first game of a home-and-home playoff series. Not only beating them, but shutting them out 3-0. The first goal you saw was scored by Wayne Hughes. The next 2 were scored by Roger Davies. The bubble burst when they visited the Cosmos, but it was a great 1979 for Tulsa. Neither Davies or Hughes is back, but Alan Woodward, who missed 11 games with a broken hand, should be a star. An interesting American is little Billy Gazonis, only 5 feet 5, but an emerging star at age 22. He's from Hartwick College. Tulsa started this season last week with an upset win over Houston in the Astrodome, where the Hurricane won 15 straight games last year. Dallas, by the way, should be interesting this year. They've finally signed the explosive scoring star. They've wanted for a long time. The name is Klaus Topmoller, a West German. He's expected to be a drawing card. He had a goal and an assist in their opening win over the Atlanta Chiefs. Now, here are the Chiefs. Their star is Jeff Bourne, whom you see scoring here. The defensive anchor is Webster Lachava, South Africa. They're coached by an American, Dan Wood, and they've added a potential high scorer in 20-year-old David Byrne this season. Thus, then, the National Conference Central Division.
I want to demonstrate.
Whitecaps. the Los Angeles Aztecs, the Seattle Sounders, and the Portland Timbers. The Vancouver Whitecaps won the league championship last season, but only after a classic struggle with the New York Cosmos for the National Conference Championship. Vancouver had won the first game in Canada. Now the Cosmos had to win a regular game, then another shorter half-hour tiebreaker game, all in one day. The score was tied at 1-1 as Cedinho here passed across to the great Giorgio Canaglia, and the Cosmos led by 2-1. Time for a celebration, as it always is for an important goal in the North American Soccer League. Celebration time in the stands, too, for the tens of thousands of Cosmos fans. Vancouver was far from finished, as poised and professional as ever. It was Bob Bernarduzzi passing over to Carl Valentine, the young Valentine, looking for a man, finding the head of Willie Johnston, the Scot. A glancing shot from Willie's head, and it was all tied at 2-2. So the regular game ended. They then went to a 15-minute sudden death overtime. No score, so they went to the shootout. It was all tied when Terry Garbutt, the fifth man for the Cosmos, had to shoot within 5 seconds, did beat the goalie, and the Cosmos had won. But they had only won the regular game. As the crowd cheered and we looked at the replay, there was much more to come in an afternoon of soccer that eventually would stretch about 3.5 hours. Terry Garbutt, though, had won the regular game for the Cosmos, and they celebrated again. But now they had to go to a shorter half-hour game to determine the National Conference Championship. But there was no scoring again in the half hour. There were moments, though. Watch as Valentine drives towards the goal, shoots, hits the crossbar, then comes down. Was it on the line? The rule is different in soccer than in American football. In American football, if the ball just touches any part of the line, it's a score. It's the opposite in soccer. The entire ball must pass over the entire line. Did it? Well, the referee, after a long discussion, said no score. Later, it was the Cosmos on the attack. Watch as Mark Liverich there gets the ball, plays the old wall game or give and go with Franz Beckenbauer, and apparently scores for the Cosmos. Liverich certainly thought so, but it turned out that heaven would have to wait for him and his teammates because the referee disallowed the goal. The replay clearly showed Liverich pushing off number 10, Bob Balaito, and down went Balaito, in went the ball, but all to no avail. The shorter game ended in a 0-0 tie, and so for the second time in the afternoon, they went to a shootout. That was tied when little Derek Posse came for his turn. Again, 5 seconds to shoot. Watch as goalie Birkenmeyer comes out, and then Posse cleverly chips it over his head into the goal, and Vancouver had the lead. Not quite over yet, however. A minute later, the Cosmos were down to their last chance, or the season would end. Nelsie Moraes was their last shooter. They were 1 point behind in the shootout. Again, the clock running. 4, 3, 2, 1. Watch it go to 0. Then he shoots, but too late, and into the goal. But it was all over. The Cosmos had lost. In the long afternoon, a continent away from home, the Whitecaps had never cracked under the strain. 1 week later, Vancouver was celebrating again on the same field after beating the Tampa Bay Rowdies in Soccer Bowl 79 for the league championship. Then finally, it was home to Vancouver, that beautiful city in the West, for a celebration that would long be remembered. A crowd estimated at 100,000 cheered them through the streets. That's the Whitecaps team singing the words to their song. I doubt if there's a school child in British Columbia who doesn't know the words. The Los Angeles Aztecs were a fascinating team last year with Johan Cruyff, and this was one of the season's strangest goals in our televised game against Washington. It's your call for a celebration by Los Angeles as Thomas Rongen, the blonde Dutchman, scored the goal. But what a strange series of shots, rebounds, and misplays it had been. Watch now, Cruyff taking the free kick, getting it to the head of Rongen. Rongen, as you watch, will head it towards goalie Irwin, who then touches it to the crossbar. On the rebound, there's a misplay by Washington, another misplay to the post, off the post to the face of the goalie Irwin, to Rongen again, and Rongen scored. Well, there's one large gap in the Aztecs lineup as they start 1980 under New Mexican ownership. Johan Price has gone to Washington, and his place can't really be taken by anyone. The other two teams in this division, the Seattle Sounders and the Portland Timbers, are both under new ownership and trying to bounce back from bad seasons in 1979.
Only on Action News.
You know, many Americans still seem to be scared by what they consider to be the complexity of the game of soccer. In point of fact, it may be the simplest game in all the world. Just take the ball and put it in the goal. However, it does have its rules. And rule number one is never do this. Never touch the ball with your hands, ever, unless you happen to be the goalie on the team. There are, of course, some other important and basic rules. Why don't we take a couple of minutes to try to understand some of those? Well, here's the playing field. Note the penalty areas in which serious fouls rate a special penalty kick. Also take note of the 35-yard lines past which offside can occur in the North American League. We'll illustrate offside and other rules with the cooperation of members of the Philadelphia Fury and Gus Constantine, for which we thank them. Now here, the red attacking player, moving from right to left, clearly is onside. He has a defender and the goalkeeper between him and the goal. Now, this is the rule, that two defensive players must be between you and the goal at the time the ball is passed to you. Now, this player in the red, as you see, is onside when the ball is passed. Even though he only has the goalkeeper between him and the goal when he receives the ball, he still has complied with the rule and may play on. Two onside situations. Now, let's consider offside. This time, the red player is clearly in an offside position. Why? Because only the goalie is behind him. Referee Constantine calls him offside, and the defending team would get an indirect free kick. Incidentally, there is but one official in charge, the referee. There are linesmen, but only to assist him. A more complicated offside. The red player is offside when the ball is passed to him. So even though he moves into an onside position to receive the ball, he is still declared to be what? Offside. Let's go to another subject now. What about out of bounds? Well, technically it's called into touch. Watch now as the yellow player kicks it over the line. That means that the red team will get a throw-in. A throw-in must be taken with both feet on the ground. The ball must be thrown from overhead and with both hands. The throw-in. Now, what constitutes out of bounds in soccer is different from American football. Whereas a ball touching the line is out in the American game, the ball is not out in soccer until the entire ball has passed over the entire sideline. The same applies to the goal line. Now, what about a ball rolling over the goal line outside the goal itself? Well, if the defensive team puts it over the line, as you'll see happening here, the team on the attack is awarded what is called a corner kick. Now, this is a very exciting offensive play. You can score from it, and that does happen. Look for the corner kick in our coverage of the games. Now, if the offensive team puts the ball over the goal line, the defensive side is given a goal kick. Any player may take this unhindered opportunity to put the ball in play from the 6-yard line. Often it's the goalie. He may kick it downfield or to a teammate nearby. The goal kick. Now, for any of the 9 serious fouls listed in the laws of association football, like this obvious push, a direct free kick is awarded. In that play, all defenders must be 10 yards from the kicker, and he may score directly from the free kick. Like that. Then there's the indirect free kick, awarded for any of the 5 less serious fouls, in this case obstructing an offensive player. In the indirect free kick, whether the infraction occurs in or outside the penalty area, the result is the same. The player taking it must pass to another teammate before a shot at the goal can be taken. This is the indirect free kick situation. However, for a serious foul in the penalty area, like the obvious shove you'll see here, a penalty kick is awarded. As a player designated moves to the 12-yard spot, all other players must be out of the penalty area and at least 10 yards away. That's the reason for that little half circle you see there. Only the goalie defends with both feet not to be moved until the ball is kicked, the penalty kick. Thus, the basic rules of soccer. I think as you watch our games this spring and summer, you'll find them very easy to understand. Perhaps the most difficult job on a professional soccer team is that of the goalie. It's certainly the job that's most calculated to drive a man daft if he doesn't have tremendous composure. To understand the difficulty and the quickness and the agility that it takes to play goalie at the professional level, you have to have some idea of the area that he's called upon to defend. Look at this goal. First of all, it's 8 feet high, so it certainly helps to be tall. But much more impressive, I think, is the width of the goal mouth. From one post to the other is 24 feet. Now, that's a very good-sized living room. Or to put it another way, if you ran from this post to that, you'd only have 2 more yards to go to make a first down in American-style football. So we'll be seeing tremendous dives and saves and all-around action in the goal mouth as we cover the NASL this year. Now, we've talked about one half of the league, the National Conference. We're going now to consider the American Conference, from which the other team in Soccer Bowl 80 will come. Let's have a look. First, the American Conference East, composed of the Tampa Bay Rowdies, the Fort Lauderdale Strikers, the New England T-Men, and the Philadelphia Fury. First, Tampa Bay, the champion in this division. Oscar Fabiani constitutes much of the firepower of the Rowdies. He led the league in points last year. That's goals and assists in his first season with Tampa Bay. He was born in Buenos Aires, but holds Chilean citizenship. He's quick and he's colorful. The next goal you see here was selected as the goal of the year in the NASL. Fabiani and his teammates finally shed their bridesmaid label in the recent indoor season. After losing in the last 2 soccer bowls, they won the indoor title. Peter Baralich scored 120 goals in 6 years for the Red Star team back home in Yugoslavia. Last season was also his first for the Rowdies. Like Fabiani, he made it a great one, scoring 9 goals and 8 assists from his midfield position. With Rodney Marsh retired, Baralich should be the midfield traffic director this year. Winston Dubose not only is an American, but also is a native of nearby Orlando, Florida. He has all the makings of a good goalie and a home state hero. Injured last year, he played the entire game last week as the Rowdies opened with a 3-2 shootout win over Washington. He talked with us about last year and this year.
In 1979, I was looking forward to having a really tremendous year. I had a good preseason, and it was unfortunate after the second game in training, I broke my hand. And it's one of the things that happens to every athlete. It was at that particular point in my life, it was a major setback. But I tried the best I could to put together the rest of the season. Worked quite hard at my game. Fortunately, we finished up in the finals, and I was selected for the national team. That was really probably the biggest honor of my life up to date. And now I've just come back from a really good close season in England. So I'm looking forward to a really tremendous year this year for myself and for the Rowdies.
Winston Dubose, another of the emerging Americans in the NASL. The Fort Lauderdale Strikers have a new Dutch coach, Cor van der Hart, and there's been much early season dissension, grumbling, and criticism of the new leader. Stars, however, the Strikers have, like Gerd Muller, the bearded 34-year-old German striker, should be more at home in 1980. Their bomber scored 19 goals in just 25 games last year. His legs are tree trunks, and his shot is an explosion. He, of course, will be up front as striker, but there are other scorers available. Nene Cubillas was the 5th leading scorer in World Cup history, playing for the Peruvian national team. He was runner-up to Pelé as most valuable player in World Cup 70. He was 2nd leading scorer to Muller in 79 at Fort Lauderdale. Now, Francisco Marinho was a matinee idol and a source of controversy with the Cosmos last year. They played him at defense, but he seemed to spend a good deal of his time shooting from far out. He should be a big help to the Strikers if they can find happiness with Coach van der Hart. The New England T-Men returned to Schaefer Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts this season after spending 79 in the narrow and rather depressing confines of the field at Boston University where they finished last. 2 years ago, they won their division in Foxborough. Philadelphia could have a disastrous season. They've lost Frank Worthington, traded away David Robb. The only new face really is that of the coach, Eddie Vermont.
ABC's wide world of sports spans the globe of sports excitement. From the men's competition of NCAA Gymnastics Championships to the daring young men who race in their flying machines, to highlights of last Monday's championship fights. A wide world of sports action today on ABC.
The American Conference, Central Division, the team, the Chicago Sting. the Detroit Express, the Houston Hurricane, and the Memphis Rogues. Phil Parks was the league's leading goalie with the Vancouver Whitecaps for the past 2 seasons. Now, however, he is signed with the Chicago Sting and should help them tremendously in their fight for the American Conference Central title. Last year, they were second to Houston. In 1978 and 1979, Parks allowed an average of less than 1 goal per game. He knows his own worth and finally demanded so much money from the Whitecaps that they let him go to Chicago, where owner Lee Stern is paying him in the manner to which he would like to become accustomed. He's backed up by the young American Paul Coffey. Chicago and the Detroit Express had a classic meeting last year. It was one of our live ABC television games in the Silverdome. Detroit led 5-3, less than 2 minutes to go, but then Martini passed to Steve Long, and the young American headed it in. Suddenly, it was 5-4 with 1 minute and 47 seconds to go. Let's have another look at that goal. Could they tie it up? Well, goals don't come that thick and fast in soccer. Or do they? Just about a minute later, actually, with 43 seconds to go in the game, again, there was a lightning thrust. This time near the goal mouth was the scoring star, Karl-Heinz Granitza, getting control, and then with that powerful left-foot shot of his, he drove it between the legs of goalie Jim Brown. It was an unbelievable moment. They had come from nowhere to tie it up. Jim Brown was desolate. And, well, he might have been, because on the replay, you'll see even more graphically just how badly he was beaten by Granitza. The ball gotten under control, then watch the powerful left foot shot and right between the legs of the Detroit goalie. Well, from there, they played a scoreless overtime, went to a shootout, and finally it was the great star of Detroit, Trevor Francis, pulling it out for his team. Francis winning in the shootout for the Detroit Express. For this season, Chicago should be stronger, considerably stronger, particularly with the addition of Phil Parks. The Detroit Express should be weaker. The reason, well, because of a new British rule forbidding loan players to America. Francis is not back this year. He was the franchise, so it may be a long year for Detroit. The Houston Hurricane surprised everyone last year by winning 15 straight games in the Astrodome. Top scorers Ty Huskovy and Eduardo Marasco, whom you'll see score here, are back. So is the excellent goalie Paul Hammond. The defense could use a little help. However, Houston opened 1980 with a loss at home in the Astrodome to Tulsa. The Memphis Rogues are stronger and have a new owner. They also have Paul Cannell from Washington and Tony Carbognani from the Cosmos. And they beat Fort Lauderdale in their opening game last week. Finally, the American West, composed of the San Diego Sockers, the Edmonton Drillers, the California Surf, and the San Jose Earthquakes. Now, this was the weakest division in the league last year and should be again. The San Diego Sockers and California each won 15 and lost 15 for the best records of 1979 in that division. In the playoffs, though, San Diego looked good. Led by the Mexicans Leonardo Cuellar and Hugo Sanchez, they upset Chicago and scared Tampa Bay. This year, they've added a good scorer in the veteran Steve David. The Edmonton Drillers were promising at the box office, but weak on the field in their first season last year. Their biggest addition is coach Timo Liakowski, who steered Houston to a surprise divisional title last year. The California Surf provided the first big upset of 1980 when they defeated the league champion Whitecaps in Vancouver last week. They've acquired a fine goalie, Alan Mayer, from San Diego. They lost Steve David, but still have Laurie Abrahams, who sparked them after being brought in from Tulsa late last season. The San Jose Earthquakes had an awful year in 1979, and this time it still will be difficult to find the way for San Jose. South American Soccer League this season, as he was last, will be Paul Gardner. Raised on the sport in his native England, an observer of the American soccer scene for about 20 years now, author of several excellent books on the sport. Paul, first of all, a lot of people are saying that soccer will be the sport of the 80s. It's easy to say, it's kind of facile, but is it true?
I think it could be true, Jim. I think soccer could be one of the sports of the 80s. That sounds as though I'm sort of belittling the thing, but I'm not, because 10 years ago, would you have thought of soccer as one of the sports of the 70s? No, you wouldn't, but it's come a long way since then. We've got so many people playing now. We've got so many people who are interested in the sport. The crowds at the NASL are growing that I think you can confidently look forward to soccer being one of the sports, one of the most important sports of the 80s.
Are the roadblocks still along the way?
Yeah, there are various things that we've got to cope with. One of them, the most intriguing of the lot, and could be ultimately the most important, is the development of American players. Now, the league is doing something about this. They're bringing in regulations which say that all 24 teams in the NASL this season must have at all times 3 Americans playing on the field. Now, last season it was 2. The question in many people's mind, in my mind, is whether you can regulate players into existence in that way. On the other hand, you get young players into the team who might otherwise not have made it, and they flower. They bloom suddenly. Rick Davis of the Cosmos is a perfect example of that, who had such a spectacular season last year.
Who do you see as the best teams in the league?
Well, I have to be conventional and go with the Cosmos again. They've strengthened key positions. They've got rid of one or two very good players, but they've brought in other good players, Oscar, the Brazilian, and the young Paraguayan player, Romerito. I think they must be the strength of the league again.
You talked about the Americans, but of course we're going to be seeing great players once again from all around the world of soccer.
Well, the influx of top world-class stars continue. I've just mentioned two, Oscar and Romerito from Paraguay. We've got Francesco Morini, an Italian player, playing for Toronto now. And, of course, we've still got Cruyff, we've still got Quinaglia, we've still got Francisco Mourinho. There are plenty of them about.
No question, we'll be seeing a lot of great players this year. Yes, they've come from around the world to bring a new Major League sport to America. If their friends could see them now.
If they could see me now, that old game of mine. I'm eating vegetarian and drinking fancy wine. I cycle stumble from to see more of that. The kind of top drawer, perfect charm, I attract. All I can say is wow, hey, look at where I am. I landed proud, riding on Apollo Jam. Would I let up all the time? If my friends could see me, if my friends could see me, oh, if my friends could see me, if they could see me now. If they could see me now, my little dusty brick, chasing around this $1,000,000.
Chapter 9.
Soccer sound.